Welcome to the Nothing to Something podcast with me, your host, Mark McLaren. This is the podcast where we interview real guests about real life, about real struggles and making real mistakes on their way to achieving real success. Today we've got the first in a very long line of special guests. Today we've got a Romanian-born Manc, somebody I know personally, I've worked with in the past, somebody who has come from very humble beginnings, matching the theme of the podcast, and somebody who has set out clear goals and worked their way towards those goals and been very, very successful. Today, we've got a fitness professional, an elite level personal trainer. Today, we've got Andrei Antonescu. Andrei, welcome to the podcast. It's an absolute pleasure, my friend, an absolute pleasure. You are somebody that sprung to mind, out of the first bunch that sprung to mind. You've got a very intriguing story. I've had the pleasure of knowing you personally for a number of years now. And I think the listeners will absolutely love your story. I think it aligns to the podcast, the theme of the podcast perfectly, which is going from nothing to something, which is going through them struggles, making the mistakes, learning, building ourselves back up and making our way towards success. Being somebody who's come from very humble beginnings myself and sort of struggled and made mistakes to get to where I am today in the modern day, there's still certain things that I think I may have struggled with. And a lot of them are involved in your story, relocating to a different country, away from your family, starting from scratch. Yeah, there's some serious achievements in there, mate. So I'm very, very interested to see how you achieved it. So should we start from the very beginning? So for the listeners, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and how it all started out?
Right. Let's see. Well, first of all, I appreciate you having me. I really appreciate the fact that you thought of me as your first guest or as one of the guests that you're going to have on your podcast. About me, let's see. I come from Romania. Uh, I have been living here for at least here in the UK in Manchester, or no, in the UK actually in general for about 8, 9 years, almost 10 years now. I think 10 years. Oh yeah, almost 10 years now. And I came here to study. I finished the university, and I started working as a personal trainer. I think in 2018. Yeah, we're. This is pretty much the summary there, but I'm pretty sure we're going to delve into the details of each chapter here.
Yeah, we certainly will. We certainly will. So just taking it back to your very early days, it all started in Romania, yes?
Hmm.
Now, I'm Manchester born and bred. For those who don't know, they can probably tell by the accent. Best city in the world, by the way. But
Admirable. It's a good
I've
city.
been through a little bit myself. Been through a little bit myself. Come from the trenches. Um, but when I think of countries like Romania, I don't know too much about them, but I'm thinking that there's some very humble beginnings in those sort of areas as well, in those sort of countries. Would you see it as not being as affluent? Would you say you were at a bit of a deficit starting out from where you came from, or would you say it was to your benefit?
A bit of both, to be honest. It is an interesting place. It's a place with a rich history and a very complex past, to be honest. And there are elements in the culture and its history that could help people or could help an individual with with the way of looking at life, and some elements that are not so great. So it is. I've been aided very much by my family, but they have never. They came definitely from humble beginnings, like you say. They were very poor, and they've built everything that they've got. And in the grand scheme of things, they are not the richest individuals in Romania, but they have definitely achieved a lot more than other individuals in the country. For the people that do not really know, Romania is one of the most corrupted countries in Eastern Europe. It's always going to be the case. That's just human nature. Uh, but it's probably more so because of the culture and because of the impact that communism had on it, right? So it's very much about who you know and what strings you can pull and what favors you can make, and yeah.
Intriguing, intriguing. Would you say that you knew that growing up as a child, or was that something that came sort of later in life?
Later in life, definitely, yeah. That
Hmm.
I learned by myself through the experiences that I've been through, and by and things that my parents would tell me, because my parents tried their best actually to help me through life, to help me with the challenges of life, to smarten me up, as they say, right? Because I was a kid. I was in many ways I was naive when I was growing up, and they tried to a certain degree. Actually, they tried shielding me and my sister from many uh, for very much from the ugliness of what it is, my country, from its people, from its corruption, from its cynicism. But I think that can be at times detrimental to individuals growing up, especially. Uh, so along the way, when in my teenage years, they tried, toughening me up a lot more, right? So they had to sit me down and tell me, okay, you have been a child up until now. Now we have to take you through the worst part of living, of being an adult, right?
Okay, okay. No, it's admirable. I know you say that it can be to detriment at times, but at least you got to. It sounds like you got to have a proper childhood. You got to have the fun. You didn't know the sinister side of things that were going on, and you got to enjoy your childhood to some degree, which is admirable that your parents have been that guided of you to enable you to be able to do that under such circumstances.
They have been a lot more strict. So this is an interesting thing. They have been quite tough and quite strict on myself and my sister. Uh, I had Depends what you define as having a good childhood. I had a childhood with good elements and bad elements, so I knew that I had that and work. So my parents are, because they were quite strict, because they were quite tough. Even as children, we were still kind of working. They still kind of treated us as good to go, good workers. You're 4 years now, 4 years old. You're good to go. You're a good worker. You know what to do. You should know by now what to do. Get your ass to work. And that,
Okay, 4 years old, Jesus. So when you say putting you to work, you're not talking like UK 4-year-old doing your chores. You're not talking about tidying your room. You're talking about going to work here.
no, well, that definitely chores at home, and helping my parents with their work, whatever they had to do when they had their own business, because they wanted to be their own boss. They wanted to have their
Hmm.
own business. They wanted to make their own schedule, of course. So they pretty much employed me and my sister, myself and my yeah.
Nice, nice. Would you say that's transferred into adulthood from somebody who knows you personally? And we'll get on to just about how in a little bit, but I would say you're a hard worker. I'd say you're a grafter. I'd say you grind compared to the average person. Would you say that's a product of the way you were raised and the way your parents sort of put you to work at an early age?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely, yeah, yeah. I am happy for what they did. I'm really grateful. I am in their. I'm going to always appreciate that for what they did, what they have instilled in me. But I also recognize that at times I can be quite obsessive, right? It's a mixed bag. I can be quite obsessed with certain things, certain elements of my work, certain details. I get boggled down, and at certain times I procrastinate, which it's something that I am working on fixing, because we're talking about developing ourselves, right? We're trying to reach different levels of success. You have to get over some of these challenges as an individual. Some individuals are going to have this issue and some are not going to have this issue. We all have our own
Certainly.
things to fix.
No, certainly. Certainly it's a work in progress. So fast forward a little bit and we've come through this childhood where we got to have a childhood, but we also were disciplined, strict parents. At what
Yeah.
stage did you realize that you were going to leave? And that's how hard of a decision was that for you to make? Because I know from our previous interactions that you had the option to stay there, work in the family business, but you chose to go it alone and move to a whole country away from your family and start from scratch.
Right. Well, well, we actually we spoke about this. Um, we left because we wanted to study in a different country. One, because we knew English, myself and my sister. We left together, right, and we studied at the same time at the same in the same university. We we thought that it was going to be a pretty good experience, and it was. It has been. We learned a lot. We developed ourselves a lot. My sister has chosen to uh, go back to my country and work there. Work with she worked with my parents for a while, and then she started doing her own thing. I had the option once we finished with the university. I had the option of either going back or staying here and working on whatever I wanted to work, and I chose to stay here. I have my own plans. I have my own ambitions, my own path to walk. I don't really want. I don't want to be given anything, and especially it's something that I want to prove probably a lot more to my parents, especially because I know how much they have worked to achieve what they have. Right. So I would never I could never live with myself going back and being given everything on a plate.
Okay, that's a good insight. That's a good insight. So would you say proving to your parents is a big part of your motivation to be
Oh yeah.
successful out on your own? Yeah. And that was your
Yeah.
primary
Yeah.
reason for not wanting to go back. Okay, that's very, very intriguing because the way I see it, having worked with yourself and having seen a hell of a lot of people from a self-employed business standpoint like yourself, you need a certain level of get up and go. You need a certain level of entrepreneurialism. Um, we see a lot of people who are from this country, who are well educated, who not necessarily have the silver spoon, but have a lot more of a head start than you potentially have, coming from a foreign country, speaking English as a second language. What would you say sets you apart? Why have you been successful? Why have you now quit all employed roles, gone full time self employed, doing this successfully for a number of years now over people who, from the outset, look like they've got a head start over yourself?
Well, it's an interesting question. Let me see. One, whenever I'm being asked this, the first thing that comes to my mind is telling people I don't like being told what to do. So, but I also recognize the fact that to become a master, you have to be a student first. So you have to walk before running. And so, of course, I worked a few jobs. I had a few mentors, you being one of them somehow. Uh, right. And so I always knew that I wanted to work for myself. Again, I'm referencing my parents in this because they have always worked for themselves. Or my dad has worked for the government for a tiny bit, but he retired from that field of work quite early in his life, or quite early in my life. I think he was in his 30s, mid 30s when he did that, and he started working with full time with my mom on their business. They've always wanted that for themselves, and they've pretty much instilled that in me, right? So now I know for sure that until I'm going to die, I'm going to work for myself.
Wow, that's a statement. That is a statement. Now, I'm going to push you here a little bit. Why? I know you said because of seeing your parents and the way they've done things, and I'm not for a second saying you shouldn't want to work for yourself, but why is that so pivotal? Why is that so important to you? And
Mm.
how did you go about making that a reality? Because I know for me, and a lot of people I know, a lot of people would want to go full-time self-employed. A lot of people struggle to find the passion and purpose, but even when they do so, the majority of society probably do it working for somebody else. How did you go about finding that? Was it always the fitness game? Was it always that's the route you wanted to go with being self-employed? Or are you a man that'll always be self-employed regardless of industry change, or regardless of whatever you're doing?
All right, let's let me tackle the second question first. So it wasn't when I went to uni, and this is something that I did back home also before going to uni. I studied acting, right? And I went. I studied. Not sorry. I did acting back home in Romania also. I was part of different theater groups. I went to different festivals, won a few awards, local things, nothing major, but just things that would confirm to myself that maybe I could do this. I could be pretty good at this. And the reason for why I did that and why I studied acting comes with I have a love for films, for expressing um, oneself, for telling a story, for characters, for a good human story, which is pretty much something that unites humans as a whole. I think a good story. But so I wanted to do that, but once I finished acting, let's be completely honest, it's not the most lucrative business. It takes a while. I started
Hmm.
working as a bartender, so that was one of the jobs that I did. Then I started working in the Apple store as a specialist, technical specialist, and then I kept being told that I was pretty good fitness wise at what I was doing, either developing myself physically or explaining things or helping people reach different objectives. And so I thought that was going to be a pretty good plan of let's start working on this. Let's learn how to become a personal trainer. Let's learn this. Let's go through courses. Let's develop our business from this standpoint, and we can also use our schedule. Sorry, make our own schedule to be able to go because at that point I still wanted to do acting. So I thought being working as a personal trainer and having my own business, I would be able to be in charge of my schedule and I would be able to go to auditions and whatever. That is still on the table. This is still something that I want to do, but probably down the line. Because at the moment I'm still focusing on this. I've gotten to the point where I am now fully self-employed. I'm working with a really good number of clients and they are all absolutely great. And I'm enjoying the process of one, developing myself as a coach, and two, developing them as clients. And we're helping them, we're guiding them in whatever they want to achieve. Right. So that's part of it. It wasn't because you said at some point whether fitness was always going to be uh, part of my main plan here. It wasn't, but it just fell into place. Things fell into place. I listened to whatever people around me told me. I listened to the feedback. I kind of paid attention to things, and it just so happened that they were right. If one person tells you, it might be a fluke, but if two or three people tell you, if four or five people tell you, might be something there. You might want to pursue that.
No, you certainly fell on your feet. Kudos for the hard work. Kudos for reaching an elite level of PT. I can say from experience, I'll probably drop in at this point our relationship from the past, just for the listeners. So we first met back in 2018, 19.
Yep. Yep.
You had at that time just recently moved in as a personal trainer in Spinning Fields in central Manchester.
Yeah.
And I came in as the gym manager for that club, which was at the time pre-COVID, had a very high number of high quality PTs. And even at that time, with yourself starting out, you stood out. Not to give you a big head by any means, so stay in your place, know your role, but you certainly you've stuck it out in the long term. But it was quite evident from back then that you were in it for the long term, that you were coachable, that you were willing to learn, that you were willing to push it. So no credit to you for putting the work in and pushing forward with that. I would certainly class after almost 10 years in the industry and more than half of those years PT myself, I would class yourself as a top level personal trainer. Do you see that as a long-term career now, or do you see yourself moving on, aside from obviously going to Hollywood and being in the next Top Gun with Tom Cruise?
Now there you go. That's where you jumped the gun there. Uh, let's see. It's something that I would still like to develop. Yes, I think I'm going to be in this industry for the long run. I think that I would like to develop myself online. I am currently working with people face to face. Well, it's whilst I do appreciate you saying that I am an elite trainer, I don't necessarily see it. I don't see it that way, not just yet. I am still learning. I think I have learned a lot more in the last 2 years than I have done, and I've been doing this for about 5 years. The last 2 years, for example, have been incredible for me. Quite a turning point, and I have developed myself as a coach, right? A lot more. I still have to learn a lot more, and I'm still doing that on a weekly basis, on a daily basis, either with myself or with my clients, or either reading, listening to other people discussing about it, talking about it, of course. So it's still something that I'm working on, but I'm definitely better now than when I was than where I was in 2018 when I started. Because I came in a bit in 2018. I already was training for about 5 years before that, and I came into the industry thinking that I already knew everything that I needed to know, which is the biggest mistake ever. I
And,
had
and one,
that
one,
bubble.
one that most of us make.
Yeah, I had that bubble burst in the first 2-3 months. I think that was an interesting time for myself.
But you stuck it out. You stuck it out. I've seen many come and go within those first 2 or 3 months, or certainly within the first 12 months.
Yeah, now I can say
So
that. Now I am a veteran. It's an
you
interesting
are,
thing.
you are
Yeah,
going
veteran.
strong, going strong. No, fantastic that it's going so well. And as much as I said earlier, when you fell on your feet, it's testament to the hard work that you've put in. And I've seen firsthand that you've put in. So dialing back a little bit to your relocation. I know you said you first moved over for your studies and going
Mhm.
to uni. Why Manchester? For me, I know Manchester's the best city in the world. It is. But why, for somebody coming overseas, coming from Romania, why Manchester?
Because it wasn't London. Because it wasn't as expensive as London. I'm not gonna lie, but
Okay, okay.
I visited. So I visited London. There are some elements about it that I like, and some elements that I don't really like. And I visited Manchester, and I definitely liked the atmosphere in this city a lot more. And I'm going to be completely honest here. It was definitely less expensive than London. It was about an hour away from Preston, where I studied, which was UCLan, University of Central Lancashire, right? And I thought it would have been at the time I thought that it would be a pretty good stepping stone, possibly moving from Manchester to London, or to a different city, or to a different country. But I'm still here now, and I like it. I actually like the city, and I think that it's ever evolving, ever developing. We'll see where it's going to end in the next 5 to 10 years, but I think it's a pretty good city. Yeah.
Yeah, you're a monk now. You're going nowhere. It's the best city in the world. I like to travel. I've seen a lot of the world to date. I'd like to do a lot more traveling, but I'll always return to Manchester. Best city in the world.
Mm.
Um, no, that's good to know. And what would you say from experience are the main differences between the UK and back in Romania?
Mm. That's an interesting question.
And to put you on the spot even more on top of that, where do you
Go ahead.
prefer? Where do you prefer, UK or Romania? Just
No, that's
remember
not fair. Wait a second. No.
your parents might be listening to this. Just remember that.
Well, thank God that my parents don't really know how to speak Romanian. Well, my mom understands a tiny bit, but my dad can't speak it for to save his life. So There are parts of. That's not really a fair question. One, until I die, I'm going to be a Romanian. I'm Romanian. That's it. I might be living in the UK, but I am not a citizen. I'm not a UK citizen. I'm a resident. That's fine, but I'm Romanian through and through, right? Uh, there are parts about. I love my country overall. There are parts, of course, there are elements that I love, elements in the culture that I love, in our traditions, in the way in which we view things. I think that we are very down to earth to a certain degree. I think we are very realistic at times. Well, I'm going to get to that actually. The elements that I don't like, of course, have to do very much with. This is interesting actually. The way in which we view life. So there's a good side and bad side to that, and that has been very much shaped by our history, by the experiences that we've gone through as a nation, by communism, by the wars, and so on and so forth. And we have been invaded so much. It's we at times I think can be quite pessimistic, quite skeptical, quite cynical, and so there's not a lot of hope. And here I think there's a lot. I think that the people in the UK can afford having this sentiment of hope with whatever they have in life, with whatever they're going through life, with whatever, yeah, with life in general. We don't necessarily have that. Just because we are so pessimistic, because we have been betrayed so many times, whether by our own actions or because of other individuals, if it makes sense.
No, it certainly does. It certainly does. Would you say that's the view of the masses? Is there a divide in Romania? There'll obviously, I assume, be a more affluent side and another side to the country. Would you say that's the view of the masses, so to speak?
Mm, yes and no. Different levels, small levels. People are a lot more, to a certain degree, a lot more optimistic in the north, and definitely a lot more cynical and a lot more pessimistic in the south, and that's where I come from.
It sounds like England. It's the same as Manchester versus London by the sounds of things. Um, but no, it's a nice insight.
Mm.
A nice insight, obviously, for someone like myself who's never been on my bucket list. I'd love to do most of Europe, to be fair, but maybe
Well,
I'll get over there
whenever
one day.
I definitely recommend it. Absolutely, I tell almost whomever I meet, I tell them, look, visit the country. It's a beautiful country. You're going to have a great fun time. It's quite cheap. That's number one. Number two, it's a beautiful country. We have the mountains, we have the beach, uh, and we have great food, great drinks,
You selling
great
it? I'm
tradition.
in. I'm in. Let's do it.
Trust me. But let me ask you this: whenever you think about Eastern Europe or Eastern Europeans in general, what are the first things that come to your mind?
Honestly, I
How
don't.
would you characterize uh, these individuals?
I honestly don't know enough about it. Probably until very recent years. Um, Geographically, know most of the world, sort of to reference or sort of know what's going on in world affairs to some degree, as we discussed on many occasions. But if I do think Europe, it probably wouldn't off top be Eastern Europe. It'd be the typical UK. Hey, I'm from Britain. Sandals and socks and all that sort of thing. I'd be heading down to Spain or somewhere fancy like that on the coast. So honestly, don't know a lot about it. Hence why it's been such a good insight for me having these conversations. But no, definitely
How
after
many
this,
individuals?
especially on my bucket list.
Right. How many individuals from Eastern Europe, apart from myself, have you met? I know there are a lot of Polish individuals, a lot of
Yes,
Hungarian, Slovakian.
most of the Eastern Europeans that I know are Polish. And there's a big
Mm.
Polish contingent around Manchester, various parts, but yeah, most would be Polish to be fair. You may actually be the only Romanian I know. There you go. Smashed it. Um, Right, while we're talking about the Romania thing still, let's just talk to these listeners about the fact you're from Romania and you've relocated to Manchester and you sound like an American. Because that was the first thing that dawned on me as soon as I moved into spinning fields and became your fearless leader at the gym back in 2018. I was like, yeah, what's he called? The American guy. So just explain to the listeners why you've got a thick American accent.
That's never gonna leave me. It's a great icebreaker, though. I the way in which I personally learned English was by watching movies, films. Again, I'm referencing my love for acting, my passion for it, and it stems from watching films, from watching different actors, American. So most of the films, of course, that were released in Romania after communism, especially, were American films. And you can think about it. The biggest ones, I don't know, anything from Goodfellas to The Godfather to Rambo to the Terminator, and then so on and so forth. Top Gun, and we were catching up. We were still when once communism fell, we had a massive influx of media from the West. And so I grew up with it. I was born in 1994. I was watching VHS tapes with Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger and all of these fucking guys. Pardon my French.
No,
So
I love it. I love it. I mean, I think that's amazing.
that's it.
You
We had
learning?
HBO. We managed not from cable. We managed to get HBO. Different schemes and such.
Okay, say no more. Say no more. That's yeah, we get the gist.
Right. And so that's what either VHS tapes. Whenever my dad would go to work, I would ask him politely to put in the tape of whatever movie I wanted to watch. Most of the time, it was going to be Terminator 2. I've watched that movie so many times I can't even describe how many times actually. And I liked it, and I would find myself as I grew up. I would find myself walking around the house, either doing chores or whatever I was doing. I would find myself repeating lines or dialogues, full pages of dialogue from movies, trying to sound exactly like the guys in the film, right?
Love it.
And of course, because we were actually taught British English in school, English, normal English, like what the language is supposed to be, with the British pronunciation, with the accent, and so forth. I went my own way.
And
now
watching
like
the movies overtook what you learned in school. Oh, amazing. Maybe that's the way we should do it going forward. Teach the kids through watching movies. There you go. Smashed it.
Not everybody will learn like this. Some actually learn by listening to music. Some will learn by English by, I don't know, maybe watching TV shows or soap operas or whatever. And some of them might actually be British. But that's how I learned English.
Nice
that and
one.
cartoons, because we didn't have subtitles back then. We didn't have dubbing back then. So cartoons were subtitled, and we had the original English voice. So I would do that also. I would repeat, whatever I heard in cartoons also.
Love it.
So that's why I'm from somewhere in, I don't know, Chicago or Missouri or something, or Ohio.
So talking about your education there, where did your education come from? When I say your education, I'm talking about your depth and understanding of all things from world affairs. Some of the conversations we've had are a little bit out there, a little bit different to the typical conversations that you'd find in a commercial gym, amongst personal trainers, amongst our peer groups. We've had conversations, just for the listeners' benefit, from religion to politics to leadership to world affairs and opinions to you name it, and we've discussed in depth. Now, first and foremost, thank you, because in this day and age, it is hard to find a level of conversation like that. Not saying everyone's an idiot, I'm really not, but it's hard to find a level of conversation like that. First off, someone who's educated to a degree that can hold that level of conversation competently on a regular basis. And secondly, somebody who enjoys doing so. So where's that come from? Coming from Romania, coming from your background, I know you went to university, but UCLan didn't teach you all the things we've talked about.
No, you're right. Yeah, you're right. This is a very interesting question. I think that a lot of it came from very much from the way in which I was raised by my parents. That because they the way to let's see if I can describe their philosophy when it comes to life, when it comes to well, I think very much they don't have any patience for BS, right? So when I mean that, when I say that is they will, if they hear something, they will challenge whatever they hear. They will ask questions. There are many times I grew up with my parents watching politics and having themselves conversations between my mom and my dad. I would watch them talk about whatever subject was either talked about on TV or whatever was happening in the country, and they very much challenged everything. That again comes from our challenges with the government, comes from our lack of trust in that because of communism. I think that's part of it. So they themselves have grown up challenging everything, right? And because of that, and they can be quite, they would talk about certain things in detail. They would ask questions in detail, like I said, to an obsessive level. And so when something doesn't seem right to me, when something is a bit off, I'm going to always ask questions, or I'm going to try to find a way to learn more about it.
Mm.
And I need to have different perspectives to be able to make up my mind. And to me, it needs to make sense from an objective standpoint, from an empirical standpoint. Empiricism basically means looking at the world or looking at something through data, through something that you can see, something that you can smell, something that you can feel, touch, and so on. Something that actually makes objective sense,
Mm-hmm.
right? Logical sense, rational. It needs to be rational. If it doesn't, then that's where it comes from. It comes partly from my parents and probably a personal obsession with these things. I don't have a lot of patience for BS. And you know.
I really like that. No, when you say that, I understand that. I've seen that firsthand. I really like that. I really like that. I think not enough is challenged in the modern day. In this modern day society we're in, there's pros and cons to living in what I call an information age.
Mhm.
First off, we have social media. We have all sorts of idiots and some well-educated people with genuine opinions that flaunt all sorts of opinions quite openly because they've got the audience to do so. And far too many people take it for granted because
Yeah.
it's on social media, because they've heard somebody who's got a lot of followers, for example, say a certain thing, they take it for granted without doing that research. So we're certainly on the same page there. Now, when you say that, growing up, I know you're a little bit younger than me, just a touch. Were you sort of were you born, well not born, but were you growing up in this information age where when you were questioning these things, you could jump on the internet and search, you could look on a smartphone? I know this is sort of semi-recent years I'm talking about now, but how would you question and query these things in the beginning if you didn't have access to internet,
Well, let me tell
smartphones?
you this. That's good. So let me tell you this. No, I did not grow up in that type of environment. And actually, I think that the first time we had internet in my household was in 2004. So I never had that. I grew up with my mother and my father calling me out on my BS as a child. If I smashed something, I would lie about it. They would ask me questions. They would break me down in a matter of minutes. So that's one thing, right? So I learned though I learned to debate and I learned to discuss things with people by watching my parents or using the experiences that I have with my parents, right? What happened here? What did you do? You did not do this? Oh, really? Talk me through it. How did you find this? You found it yourself? Something like this, right? These are just examples, but they were just hammer, hammer. It could take, it would, even if it took hours, it didn't matter. They would break me down, asking questions, challenge me until they would get their answer because they knew they could smell it, you know? And so, no, we did not grow up with the internet. We did not grow up with smartphones. We we had to read. We were watching the news. We had to read the news. We had to go to the library, find information in school, which I thought that was pretty good. Of course, we were up to a certain point. We were encouraged to find information by ourselves. We would get the subject. Go on now. Shu, find information about this subject, and it needs to be good. And then I need you to look for different perspectives, right? So this is something that my parents also did. I don't know if it comes from their upbringing, or their education, or the way in which they decided to do things, but they would hear different perspectives, which I appreciated, right? And then this is something that I have tried doing myself. Look at different perspectives. Look at something from a different perspective. So you've spoken about, you've mentioned about you mentioned the fact that there are a lot of people nowadays that express their opinion. Some might actually have a good insight, and it might be a good take, and from some other individuals that might not be necessarily the case. But the masses, or the general population nowadays, they don't really have the attention span, or they don't have the patience to hear multiple perspectives, right? Because that's what I'm thinking about when I'm thinking about critical thinking. That's part of it. You need to hear different perspectives, but you need to have patience to be able to educate yourself on something. You need to have the patience to do that. We don't necessarily have that nowadays anymore. It needs to be fast. It needs to be convenient. It needs to be done in a second.
I'm with you, and that seems to be becoming less and less in the modern world. People don't like to hear an opinion that is opposed to their own. But
it makes you feel good, then you're just going to continue with that opinion, or with whatever you've heard. It doesn't really work like that. And my parents made a point. It's not about feelings here. It's about what's the truth, what's logical, what makes sense, what's rational.
it seems like your parents have had a huge impression, but also a good one. There's still a lot of the right values in you.
Yeah.
So
this is actually this conversation. No, actually, we've had many conversations about this even before, when we were working together, and I've mentioned this multiple times. But even now, actually, I'm amazed by the fact that they have had so much influence over me and the way in which I do things in life.
nice one. So, mum and dad, thank you. That's what he's saying in a roundabout way. In a roundabout way. Okay. No, lovely insight. Lovely insight. Thank you. We'll start to wrap it up a little bit. I've got a little round of quick fire questions. Say quick fire, take your time. And give us a little bit of an insight into you now. So first and foremost, talk us through your morning routine.
Ooh, right. Well, definitely, the first thing that I'm going to do once I wake up is going to be my bed. I make my bed. It's a must. I remember. This is a funny thing, actually. I remember a story when I was a kid. My sister would challenge my mother on it, because my mother was, again, I'm probably going to make a lot of references to this because they have such good points, especially my mother with regards to this. My parents always told us, okay, you wake up, you make your bed, you brush your teeth, you wash your face, right? Standard things. Some people disagree. Some people don't really agree with the fact that these need to be a priority for you. And I remember a moment where my sister challenged my mother about it. Why should I make my bed if I'm going to jump in it, and if I'm going to sit in it a moment later or a minute later? And this might be the crudest thing ever, but my mom's response to that was, "Why should we wipe our ass if we're going to?" You know what I mean, right?
Yeah, the perfect response.
It makes sense, right? Where why should we brush our teeth if we're going to eat later again? It's good custom. It's a high standard,
Mhm.
right? And it's you accomplish. That's the first thing that you accomplish during the day. You made
Yeah,
your bed. That's number one.
something checked off
Number
the
two, what
list.
else? Exactly, and it's a list. And yeah, and I grew up with this. Actually, I was gonna reference this. The fact that uh, I would grow up with a list of chores waiting for me, list of stuff that I need to do around the house to accomplish. And that's pretty much the way in which I do things now. I have lists. I have things to do, and I plan out things all throughout even throughout the day. If I find myself planning the next thing that I'm doing. So making my own bed, brushing my teeth, right? The usual stuff. I need to eat. That's the first thing. And whilst I'm eating, I'm going through whatever I need to do throughout the day. Whatever, how many clients I've got to see, whatever I need to take them through. What do I need to focus on? Maybe I have a few hours here to, but I try to do this. I have learned now. I tried to do this the day before, but I even now actually I try to see if I have enough time during the day to work on different things, develop other things, either with my business or for myself.
Yeah, so you're setting that structure in first thing in the
That's
morning.
more
So
than
yeah, makes
yeah.
sense.
It never
Makes
changes
sense.
for me. It never really changes. It's consistent.
Makes sense. So on to the next one, and I'm going to use here Dan Pena as a reference. We know he's like multi-billionaire, very loud and
Yeah, I know.
brash, whether you like him or not. He talked
Mhm.
about a concept of your priorities in life, your personal and your professional goals of what you want to achieve. Everything you do should align to one or the other, either personal or professional goals. What percentage of your week would you say you are on it and doing things that contribute to those goals? And what percentage of the week are you tossing it off, for lack of a better phrase? How much time is wasted?
Oh, mm.
Be honest.
So I am. I'm trying to be completely honest here. So it depends on a weekly basis. So I know for sure that I need to do. There's always work to be done. There's always something to be focusing on. There's always something that needs to be developed, whether for myself from a personal standpoint or a business standpoint. And that changes on a weekly basis at times. Some things are a lot more consistent and need to be done, and then some things change. They're quite fluid. I'm probably on it, and this is probably 60 or 70% of the time of the week, or 80% of the week, and that's my problem. And that's pretty much because of the fact that at times, like I said, I can procrastinate a bit, which is the thing that I hate the most about myself. That's number one, procrastination. So I'm working on it, right? Because of that, sometimes I don't get enough sleep. I don't recover. I do way too much. There are times when I actually put too many things on my plate, and I shoot myself in the foot. Right? And sometimes I'm chasing way too many things at the same time. Again, I'm shooting myself in the foot. Right? So when you said at some point, it comes down very much to priorities. You need to prioritize what's as much as I what's can first in on the whatever list way and I what's can. Second and third and fourth. Sometimes I don't do that, right? But
St-
I would say that's an element of what
Pleasure.
makes one man successful, of what makes an individual successful. To be honest, thank
No,
you.
good insight.
I appreciate
And do
it.
you know what
Thank
I
you, my
take
man.
from that?
Have a good one.
The main thing I take from
Mm.
that is your level of introspection. So I'll turn that into a positive. You were honest enough to say, truly, what percentage of the week you're on it, roughly. But then you went into detail about all the things that you could improve most people wouldn't be aware of the things that could improve, not in such detail anyway. So you just need to take that next step of implementing those changes. So the level of introspection there is yeah, that's a quality trait. That it's a real quality trait, and something that's only
I
even come to
appreciate that.
myself over recent years.
That I would say, if I could say the same thing about you. Yeah, that's one of the common traits that we have, is the fact that you have a good amount of self-assessing, and you need to have that if you want to if you want to develop yourself as an individual, regardless of whatever you're doing, whether you want to have your own business, whether you're training yourself, whatever you want to achieve, you have to self-assess yourself. You have to be able to look at yourself and see, okay, this is good for now, and this could be improved. This could be developed further, and needs to be developed further. And you need to find ways to give yourself a kick up the ass. And sometimes to take it a step back and relax for a second. That's when I need to, at times, need to be forced to take a vacation, for example.
Yep, recharge those batteries.
Yeah.
Sharpen the saw, as they say. No, nice one, nice one. And then the final one. No, I've got another couple actually. Trying to let you get off too early there. Tell me, if you could give yourself from 15 to 20 years ago, pre-Manchester move, one bit of advice, what would it be?
Just be consistent. Take your time with it and be consistent with whatever I was doing. A lot of times I wanted to arrive to the destination before even crossing the path, even before walking the path. Yeah, take your time with whatever you're doing and be consistent. Do a little bit on a daily basis, but take your time with it. That's probably the thing. And even now I have to remind myself, take your time with it. Don't rush into things. And I can give a few examples for why I think that that's the most important thing. But yeah, be consistent, take your time.
Nice one. Enjoy the process. No, good insight again. And last one, honestly, this time I'm not winding you up. You have an opportunity.
It's going to be I got 3 more.
You have an opportunity. You're going to sit down to dinner with 3 people, dead or alive, past or present, any 3 people with a mission to make the rest of your life as successful as possible. So success can be your context of success, whatever you define as success. So for some people, it'll be financial, some people it'll be relationships. Any 3 people, dead or alive, to make the rest of your life as successful as possible. Go. Who are the 3?
So okay. First one, this is a dead individual. This was a U.S. economist, Milton Friedman.
Okay.
Not many people will know.
You see, yeah, outside the box. This is what I'm saying.
This is, for many individuals, is probably going to be a very boring thing of, but actually, you know, there are many people. Now you see, you're putting me on the spot because I hate this. I could probably give you 5 or 6 individuals.
No, only 3. Only 3.
Milton Friedman, U.S. economist. He was incredible at explaining economy, the way in which we do things. It was very much related to how human nature works, and we work on impulses, biological drive, and incentives, right? And the way in which based on our psychology, based on evolutionary psychology, he was great at explaining that and why capitalism worked, right, and works. Because I am a capitalist in that sense, right? Many people might not like that. Anyways, but he's one of them. Second, probably Jordan Peterson. You and I know about him. A lot of individuals know about him. I think he's quite an insightful individual. I think he's very well articulated. He's intelligent, and he managed to touch on, or put his finger on, what or some of the issues that individuals face nowadays in society, or what's wrong with society with regards to many subjects. To be honest, we probably don't necessarily have the time that much because we could delve further into what he's talking about. But yeah, I think he's a purely, even if you disagree with the individual, I think it's a joy just to watch him have a conversation with other people
Hmm.
and listening to other people talking with different viewpoints develops you as an individual, helps you as an individual, even purely from just uh, from being able to have a simple and civilized conversation with someone. You could take that away from him. And the third individual, Quentin Tarantino, the director.
Okay, okay, intrigue,
I love his
intrigue.
movies. I love his movies, but I think I would love to have a conversation with him purely because I think that from a film fan standpoint, we are pretty much at the same level. We could talk about films. I choose him because of his passion for what he's doing and his passion for films, and that's common. You need to have passion, and his passion shines through whenever, if you hear him talk to other individuals about films, it comes through. He could do this for hours and hours and hours and hours, and it's just a joy to listen to him. And
Yeah,
if you could if you can take that drive, uh, and use it in other activities, it's incredible.
yeah, certainly. You can transfer that to anything when somebody's so passionate. I reckon there's probably a secret motive in there as well, isn't there? You talked earlier on about wanting to go into Hollywood somewhere down the line. So is that your plug to try and get you in?
No, no. Well, he was quite actually. He grew up quite poor, incredibly poor actually. So being able to do that, just he loved movies so much that he managed to elevate himself to where he is now, to being one of the most loved directors in Hollywood, and one of the most successful,
Yeah,
and one of the richest individuals in the world,
no,
just because he
massively
loves
credible.
movies.
Yeah, top of his game, top of his game.
Mm.
No, three very different individuals there. Very different individuals. Not
I know.
sure. I'm not sure
Yeah.
we'll get them three again. Admirable choices. Certainly with you on Mr. Peterson. I think Jordan Peterson's incredible. We've had many conversations about him and about the topics that he's discussed in our previous
Mhm.
relationships and working together. I think we've plugged him for a long time as the best combination of intelligence and articulation in the modern day. Um, yeah, some good choices. Good
I think
choices.
I think he's got one. He's the level of composure that he's got, and the stoicism that he has, or he continues to prove uh, that he has, is amazing. I don't think, again, this is it nowadays, that the what's going on in society. I think that many people, and I've had this conversation with many individuals, and I've said this many times actually. I think that we very much think, we don't think actually, we view life, or we act or navigate life through feelings, when instead I think that we should be thinking about it more. I think we should be looking at life, or navigating things in life, or challenges in life, from a rational standpoint, and we need to be a lot more composed, and we need to be a
Mm,
lot more stoic about it.
mhm,
I think that that's something that's missing, and I think he's a great example of how to do that,
mm.
purely just by looking at the way in which he carries himself. I think that's something that should be emulated.
No, agreed, agreed. No, thank you very much. That about wraps us up. Thank you very much for joining me. Honestly, mate, it's been an absolute pleasure and an honor once again. Thank you for joining me.
Always, always.
Just before we go, where can the listeners find you? If somebody wants to see a little bit more, if somebody wants an elite personal trainer around the Manchester area, or an online coach, where can we find you? What's your social handles?
Well, there's gonna be just one, the simple one, on Instagram, at Andre.coaching. That's ANDREI.coaching. Simple like that. And
Cool.
in fact, I don't like social media that much, but I'm trying, of course, to play the game as much as I can in whatever way I can.
No, certainly. Nice one. That's perfect. And I'll stick that below in the
Pleasure.
comments. Right,
Pleasure.
mate. Thank you so
Pleasure.
much. And I will speak to you again very soon, hopefully.
Thank
All the
you.
best.
I appreciate it. Thank you, my man. Have
Thank
a good
you.
one. I appreciate it. Thank you, my man. Have a good one.